Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. At the start of May, the pork industry released a new marketing slogan. It's now "Taste What Pork Can Do," in a bid to get consumers to recognize the flavor component of pork. It was a hot topic of conversation last week at the World Pork Expo, and I picked the brain of Brian Ernest from the CoBank Knowledge Exchange about what this new tagline could mean for the industry.
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting, where pork sits in terms of a demand standpoint. There's been a lot of focus in developing export markets, so interesting to see with, maybe some trade disruptions overall from an export standpoint, the demand kind of slowing down in China. What can be developed from a domestic standpoint is interesting. I think pork kind of sits in this sweet spot right now where we've got higher beef prices and consumers kind of gravitating towards chicken for that value protein, but pork has a lot to offer. I think it's just been kind of difficult to convey that on some of these bigger type roast items over the years with the consumer.
So as you dug into how this new tagline could impact the industry, what did you find? Where is the potential for growth?
It does seem interesting that I think consumers are looking for kind of new, exciting flavor profiles. When we think of pork, typically it's bacon, right? Or, sausage toppings for pizza and that sort of thing. There's been strong demand around that, but then some of the other items that maybe have slipped in recent years, there's opportunity there. I think about, the pork chop is one of those items that can be difficult for consumers to cook. So reinventing and thinking about that in a new way is something that's exciting to think about and see what the potential is there.
As we do try to build more domestic demand here in America for our pork products, are there any changes that the industry should be looking at? Are there any models we should be trying to adopt into the pork space?
Yeah, I think one of those is thinking about, the makeup of pork in general. The consumer seems like they're kind of after the fat, and they've found that that's where the flavor is, right? When we think about beef, the marbling is one of those attributes that consumers have finally figured out that, this is where all the flavor's at. If there's opportunities there, it may be from the genetics standpoint that, is there a way to introduce more of that quote-unquote fat flavoring in the pork profile? This could be kind of interesting to see if that and similar cuts. So thinking about reimagining pork as maybe a ribeye option in that profile would be interesting. I've seen some demonstrations that suggest that there's somewhat of an opportunity there, it'd be interesting if we can get the labor there that's required as well.
Oh, because you have to do additional cuts, additional processing components to get it to that level?
Right, yeah, that's kind of my thought with that. So.
All right. Brian, as you think about how this could play out in the near term, it takes a while to make genetic improvements.
Sure.
Do you think we could see that domestic demand rebuild in 6 months or build up more in 6 months?
Well, I think the opportunity is there. Certainly the consumer has gravitated toward animal protein in general. So seeing that development, there's I would say a gap in terms of availability, animal protein in general. So pork, I think, has every opportunity right now to address that need that the consumer is looking for. So certainly the market opportunity looks like it's there. So encouraged at what we've got in the back half of the year in 2025.
If you'd like to read more from Brian's report or see the strategies he recommends for the pork industry going forward, you can find it online at the CoBank Knowledge Exchange. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up on these volatile commodity markets by visiting farmfutures.com. Well, it was a big week for grain traders as both the United States and Brazil, two of the world's leading agricultural producers, both issued their crop outlooks this past week. Joining me now to break down the numbers is Cesar Cruz. Cesar serves as the Director of Research for Advanced Trading. Cesar, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me here again, Mike. Nice talking to you.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Cesar. And I want to talk first about the numbers out of Brazil. We saw a report from CONAB on Thursday, and that Brazilian crop, both corn and soy, seemed to be growing. Can you fill us in on what we learned about the soy crop in Brazil first?
Sure. Yeah, CONAB increased by a tiny bit their soybean crop in Brazil this year. Would be a record. I think mostly harvested in Brazil, close to 170 million metric tons. That's the number that we have. And CONAB Thursday morning came within the trade estimate. Same thing for the USDA. They didn't change Brazil's production, and this is the main thing that we saw for beans in Brazil. CONAB actually decreased a tiny bit also their domestic consumption. Brazil is not only here that we have a problem with all these mandates for the blending biodiesel production. Soybean oil in Brazil accounts for 75% of the total blend. And because Brazil didn't increase their blend this year, CONAB decreased their estimate for crush in Brazil also.
So I'm wondering, Cesar, if we're seeing that domestic demand for soybean byproducts in Brazil come down, should we expect to see more whole soybeans on the market, export market out of Brazil this year?
That's what CONAB saw on Thursday. They increased their export estimate a little bit also, close to 106. It's a different market year, but they're expecting Brazil to export a little bit more beans in the coming year.
We'll see it. We've been seeing them continue to ship more and more beans as time goes on. And Cesar, we also got reports that Brazil's corn crop, particularly that safrinha, the second crop corn, is much bigger than anticipated. Can you fill us in on the corn production numbers?
That's good. That's something that everybody's been talking about Brazil corn production now, right? So harvest is about 2%, was about 2% done as last Sunday, according to CONAB. And the main states like Mato Grosso, Goiás, they are just picking up with their harvest progress now. And we are seeing very good yields in the beginning. Those areas are probably good areas, irrigated areas. But what I hear from contacts down there in Brazil is that they've been getting yields better than expected, and the range for the second corn crop production is kind of wide. CONAB is around 101 million metric tons now, if I'm not wrong, but I'm hearing anything between 100 million metric tons to 115 million metric tons. So there is potential for that crop to increase also the estimates in the coming months.
Okay, so we could see a lot of corn coming out of Brazil. Now, Cesar, I understand most of this corn isn't going to make it to the export markets. It's going to stay in Brazil. What is driving their increase in domestic demand down there?
That's a great question, Mike. Yeah, we are estimating that not going to be one for one. They're not going to produce more, but Brazil's domestic consumption has been very hot. And the USDA took a little while to realize that they have been adjusting Brazil's domestic consumption, both for feed use and for ethanol production over the last maybe 5 months. And they didn't change anything this past Thursday. But Brazil has been exporting a lot of animal protein in general. I'm talking about poultry, I'm talking about beef, pork, and that requires more meal and corn production, right? In addition to that, they have been using more and more corn for ethanol production. As a reminder for people who are listening to us now, Brazil traditionally produces ethanol from sugarcane. And the corn usage for ethanol in Brazil is relatively young. And new, it's been like for the industries are relatively young. It's been at least probably 10 years that Brazil started producing corn-based ethanol. So that is driving domestic consumption and it's been very hot, the market for ethanol consumption.
Lots to talk about in these grain markets, and we'll be back with more from Cesar Cruz, Director of Research at Advanced Trading. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up on these volatile commodity markets by visiting farmfutures.com. Welcome back. We're breaking down the markets with Cesar Cruz, the Director of Research with Advanced Trading. And Cesar, we saw that Brazil report come out Thursday morning. Hot on its heels was the USDA's World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates report. Traders were watching for some changes here. What did we see in the old crop soy numbers?
Well, that's the only change we actually had. It was a very boring report. I can see if I can say that. The only change that we had for old crop is that the USDA saw, everybody was seeing that corn exports have been very strong. Week after week, we have seen very good soybean export sales. This past week was okay, but it's still good within the trade range. And USDA bumped our old crop exports a little bit, by 50 million metric ton, 50 million bushels, if I'm not wrong. So that's the main change that we saw. We maybe can see more increases going forward. We still have like probably two more months for the end of the crops year, right? So that can be a little bit more surprises for us going forward. Other than that, there wasn't anything else that we can highlight in the report. As I said, it was kind of a boring report.
Kind of a sleeper, and that's okay from time to time, particularly when we've got this much other outside news moving our markets. Cesar, with this report now in the rearview mirror, traders on the corn side, what are they going to be focused on here for new crop as we get deeper into summer?
No, I think the main topic that we've been discussing here is we know we are on the average pace for planting here in U.S., but there are some states, especially in the Eastern Corn Belt, where we have seen some delays in planting. I'm talking about Ohio, for example, and the talks are okay. We have some area that were left to be planted outside the prevent planting date, so we may see some decrease of area in the June 30th report. So that can change a little bit in the July report. We didn't see anything. Everybody was, I think, there was a consensus that USDA doesn't change much in the June report, right? But this is something we need to watch in the corn market. And in addition to that, is going to just don't see any more corn planted in those areas, or they're going to be switched into beans.
That's
so
right.
There's another question we have to answer in the coming weeks.
Yeah, we will. We'll see how those acreages shake out. Now, another big headline event that crossed our desk this past week was a potential trade deal between the United States and China, or a de-escalation perhaps of the tariff war. Cesar, fill us in. Do we have any of the details? Is agriculture going to benefit? Do we know?
That's a very good question. I just know that we don't know anything about that yet, right? So there are a lot to talk about. I think they are prioritizing other sectors. Apparently, there was no deal. In addition to the extension of the tariffs that we currently have, there were other more socioeconomic deals that with the visas for Chinese students. But agriculture wasn't apparently on the table this past week between Chinese and U.S. officials, right? So we need to check what's going to happen, because right now China hasn't bought anything from us from new crop soybeans. Last year they started buying from us in early July, so that's something we need to watch going forward.
Absolutely. Lots to watch. China, that is a huge question mark that will be laying over the markets for the remainder of the summer. Cesar Cruz, the Director of Research with Advanced Trade, and we always appreciate your insight, especially when things are this volatile. Thank you so much for joining us here this week.
Thank you very much.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, Greg keeps an eye on the weather all across the country. And Greg, it's been unseasonably warm in the Pacific Northwest. Is that going to continue?
They'll get spells of heat basically from the Cascades onto the east, and already some concern that we're tapping into the snowmelt season already. A bit premature. Remember, we've had some spells of heat during the course of the springtime season, but the winter wheat fields moving towards maturity, I'm sure. And we have this setup here where the jet stream is in off the Pacific, kind of a southwest to northeast flow. You get a little bit of some of that tropical moisture, daytime heating, a couple of weak disturbances, and at least across parts of the central divide, some of these dry-based thunderstorms might actually make some degree of rainfall into parts of the southern Canadian prairie and across the spring grain belt, but at least some accelerated crop growth and development, and again, some degree of moisture, a little more livestock stress across the Dakotas and points to the east and south. Very little change, a little deepening of the trough here into northern California, Pacific Northwest, so some cooling up aloft. We may stray a shower or two into the northwestern reaches, Rogue River Basin, Willamette Valley, and a couple of thunderstorms as well into Big Sky Country, parts of the Dakotas, where we have seen some modest improvement to some of the ongoing dryness and drought concerns in that particular part of the country. Here's the usual thermal low, heat induced across the southern reaches of California, Imperial Valley, and the usual hot ridge is over the southwestern reaches of the country, the Four Corners, eastern flank along with this boundary, and some degree of tropical moisture and wet grounds, would you believe, across Oklahoma and Texas will spark a couple of showers and thunderstorms, especially with daytime heating. Slightly cooler air into the northern valleys here as we head on through the early to middle parts of the week, and the snow melt as well rapidly diminishing or gone. Concerns about irrigation and recreational usage off the Sierra ranges. There's triple-digit readings into parts of the southwest, into areas of West Texas, cotton back up across Nebraska, a couple of showers and thunderstorms. And Mike, can't recall the last time I saw Oklahoma out of the drought monitor.
Welcome news there for folks in the Southern Plains. Now up north, Greg, do you anticipate more severe weather with this setup?
Yeah, this time of the year, it's still severe weather season as it applies to the Dakotas, the upper Midwest, Great Lakes region. Here's the southwest and northeast jet stream pattern, the northern but fairly weak area of ridging up aloft and a couple of boundaries, and we serve up a couple of showers and thunderstorms. Again, some additional dryness and drought improvement in the western and northwestern Corn Belt back into the Great Plains areas. Yeah, we're getting a little more bearish on all this Armageddon talk of dryness and drought expanding. Maybe a flash drought, but that'll be depending on the tropical weather season in the Atlantic. A couple of showers into the Ohio Valley. Little change on the maps and charts heading through the middle to late portions of the week. Welcome heat across the Corn Belt. A couple of showers and thunderstorms as well, the strongest of which western Great Lakes region back towards the Corn Palo Sioux Empire region, much like we saw last week. A couple of dry-based thunderstorms into parts of New Mexico. A couple of tropical downpours. There's a system way south into the Yucatan. Nothing cooking in the Atlantic. Too much Saharan dust. That warms and dries the atmosphere. So for now, the tropics are quiet. Warmth all the way to the Ohio Valley, and still a scattering of showers and thunderstorms across the Plain States. A couple of more tropical downpours across the Gulf Coast and those wet pasture lands as well, adding to more atmospheric moisture on the southern plains.
Well, I know growers out east have dealt a lot with the wetness. Do you see a dry down coming for those folks?
For some folks, especially where we need it in the easternmost fringes of the Corn Belt, Ohio, maybe Kentucky and Pennsylvania, if you want to count that. Showers and thunderstorms scattered for the upper Midwest back into the western reaches of the Corn Belt. A couple of showers too in through areas of the mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast and New England, where we've seen significant drought improvement as well. Still lingering the dryness and drought, but improving with time, we think, with additional showers and thunderstorms in the western Corn Belt. The warmth welcome, temperatures in the middle 80s to low 90s. Optimum crop growing conditions across much of the Corn Belt areas. A couple of showers across the St. Lawrence River Valley, otherwise much of the mid-Atlantic region. High and dry, and nice to see welcome moisture of late in this area where we've seen significant drought improvement. And along this I-4 corridor southward of the Everglades, boy, extreme drought. We need the moisture, maybe not the lightning. Downpours across parts of Texas with scattered showers and thunderstorms across the rest of the deep south and southeastern states. And would you believe they're still trying to get cotton planting wrapped up over parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, coming off the wet spring. Scattered showers and thunderstorms down across Florida. Wet weather in through the Big Bend area of Texas, otherwise heat and humidity. And a couple of more showers and thunderstorms scattered on areas northward into parts of the Tennessee and lower Ohio valleys.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. As the 2025 growing season heats up, farmers are taking a closer look at plant pests and diseases. Recently, I had the chance to talk with Jason Gibson of Corteva about a threat that more farmers could be facing this year, and that's tar spot as it makes its way across the country. I asked Jason how best to mitigate the risks from this disease.
Well, I think the main thing with tar spot, it's still a relatively new disease for the U.S. market. And it's quickly spreading north, south, and west. And so, for example, in Nebraska, where I reside, we've been facing it the last couple of years. Some of the very first tar spot was reported back in 2015 into Indiana, northern Illinois, and it continues to spread. And because farmers don't know a lot about it yet, there's a little bit more fear or anxiety about it than maybe gray leaf spot, northern cornleaf blight, diseases we've faced in the past.
When you think about that tar spot in particular, does it have a big yield impact on the corn crop?
Yeah, we've seen reports from other states that particularly in 15 and 17, 20 to 60 bushel yield losses associated with disease. So definitely something you want to pay attention to.
So for growers who are maybe confronting tar spot on their acres for the first time, what are some management techniques that have been working?
Well, the key thing is routine scouting is really important, especially as we get into that pre-tassel, post-tassel time frame. We want to make sure that we're actively scouting the fields, particularly focused on that ear leaf and particularly the two leaves below it. We want to really reduce the amount of lesions that we see above that ear leaf, because that's where we start to lose more foliar leaf loss, and we start to see more yield impact as it gets above the ear leaf. So we definitely want to be proactive with fungicides in that VT R1, R2 timing. And again, it'll depend a little bit on when that initial disease incidence shows up.
All right, so that's the corn risk out there. And on the soybean side, of course, we've still got white mold across much of the United States. What do we need to know about white mold?
Yeah, a couple things that are kind of interesting about white mold is we always think about, the soil conditions being moist to get that mushroom to the sclerotia body to germinate, produce the mushroom, and then release the spores. And interesting work that's been done by Penn State has realized that only about 25% soil saturation might be all that's needed to get those sclerotia body that are in the soil to actually produce the mushroom. I think also we have farmers coming off of 2024, maybe where they didn't see as much white mold. But don't get caught off guard in 2025. What we've kind of noticed since 2017, seems like those fields that were planted as soybeans in 2017 that end up being fields in 2019, 2021, 23, and now 25. For some reason, those years seem to have pretty good inoculum loads in the soil, and that sclerotia can remain viable up to about 10 years. So don't get caught off guard at what you saw last year. Have your mindset that you could indeed need to spray in 2025 for white mold.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, Jason, as we think maybe we are going to need to spray, we want to tackle these problems head on. What are some fungicide approaches you'd recommend?
Yeah, a lot of diseases, we wait till we see them and then we act on them based on how much leaf loss is happening, where the stage of growth is, and then the cost of the fungicide, cost of the application, and we weigh those two out and make a decision. Unfortunately, with white mold, is we have to be preventative to be able to provide suppression of this disease. If we see the disease, that cottony white growth, we're already too late. So we got to be proactive. And generally what we encourage is that first application to occur between R1 and R2. Also on labels, I get a lot of farmers reaching out to me. I can't find white mold on the label. Look for Sclerotinia stem rot. That's white mold. So that's maybe what you need to be looking for on the label. Recognize there's a lot of labels that have white mold or Sclerotinia stem rot listed on the label as suppression, but there's only about a handful of those products that actually deliver good to very good results. A couple of those from Corteva is Approach. Approach has been kind of the mainstay in the market for white mold. Last year, we took that picoxystrobin in Approach. We combined it with prothioconazole, another active ingredient in a different mode of action category, put the two together and created Viatude. So now we have effectively two unique molecules actively working on white mold disease. So not only can we provide better control, or better suppression, I should say, but we can also deliver better resistance management long term, especially if you're a producer that's been spraying for a long period of time for white mold. We want to reduce the possibilities of resistance issues. The other nice benefit of picoxystrobin, it's incredibly good in terms of delivering plant health benefits, increasing chlorophyll production, which is a catalyst for photosynthesis, also helps that plant mitigate heat and drought stress, which we typically have as we get into July, August months. So even in the absence of disease, or that disease maybe doesn't materialize, it's very common for us to see a 3 to 5 bushel yield increase, even in the absence of disease pressure. So your farmers, by spraying those products like Viatude and an Approach, fear not, they're still going to get some yield benefit out of it, even if that white mold were not to materialize for them.
Lots of ways to get that ROI when it comes to these crop protection tools that are available today. Jason Gibson, Market Development Specialist with Corteva, thank you so much for taking the time to fill us in.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH. Built by farmers.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Max Armstrong joins us again today with the second edition of our Plan Smart, Grow Smart series with BASF from David Palmer in Northwest Missouri.
Did you always want to farm as a young man?
Yep. I was born and raised 5 miles north of here. And I got out of school in '72, and I rented my first farm that year. A neighbor come down and wanted to know if I wanted to rent 120 acres. I said, yeah. And it's just went ever since. You got to love it to do it, because there's times that it's pretty challenging whether you don't keep your head above water or not, but no 2 years have ever been the same.
I think back not many years ago, and we didn't really understand what a fungicide could do, the difference that it could make. Talk with us about your experience with Veltima fungicide.
It's a very good product. Veltima, we've used it since it come out. It pays back dividends after you do the math, but we've just, you got to have it in what we do.
What made you try Veltima? Did you see some side-by-side comparisons, or did you just try some on your own the first opportunity you had?
We'd been using some other products and weren't really happy, and it come onto the market, and our local rep thought we ought to try some of it, so we tried some the first year, flew it on, and then we could see it was going to pay. It's a good product.
As you go across the Corn Belt, you hear a lot of different fungicide challenges. It's not always the same from one area to another. Tar spot is almost public enemy number one on the list of some growers I know.
It's been around here. It come on late last year, so we didn't have a big issue with it other than turn everything black when it was combined. But I'm afraid this year, if it stays hot and dry, we might be in trouble. So we'll darn sure put a swath of Veltima on to help cure that a little bit.
So can you see a difference? I mean, is it visible to you late in the season as you look at the plants?
Yes, you can see it. Because we've strip tested some before, and you can fly with a drone and see it. You can walk out in the field and see it. It just makes a difference.
Talking about yield earlier, you mentioned plant health, the visible health of the plant.
I like a healthy plant. I don't want that plant to want for nothing.
That plant health late in the season is really crucial too, isn't it? I mean, you need a good finish.
You need a healthy plant in August in this part of the world. You take that heat. I don't know what that stuff does, but it just makes that plant shred off the heat, like it's sitting in a shade tree or something. That's not a good way to explain it, but you can see the difference.
As you look at that view in the combine cab and you watch the yield monitor, how significant has the difference been for you? Have you tried to quantify it at all, David?
That helps a bunch. The yield monitor just tells a lot of untold stories.
Thank you, Max and David, for that update. And folks, to see the full Plan Smart Grow Smart series, visit the website, plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Earlier in the program, Greg mentioned the rain chances for some folks across the country. And Greg, who do you see getting the bulk of that moisture this week?
No, really don't need any more in parts of the southern plains, Oklahoma and Texas, would you believe? Can't believe I said that here. But at the same time, needed across parts of the plains and western Corn Belt locales, and some spots 2-3 inches worth. Matter of fact, we'll update this and the rest of the summer outlook, including the tropics and the talk of all this drought, probably a flash drought as the summer wears on, over at feedstuff365.com. Sarah Muirhead and I will get together Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Of course, we update the forecast for this week in agribusiness over at feedstuff365.com on Tuesdays and Fridays as well. Look at the moisture across the western states and across Dixie down through Florida as well. So moisture for the heartland over the drought areas this week.
Well, let's talk temperatures, Greg. What do you see that week of June 23rd?
Here is the warm to hot ridge running from Texas, more so mid-90s as far north as the southern Corn Belt. So if you're in good shape with soil moisture, yeah, there'll be a little stress out there, but some accelerated crop growth and development. Keep an eye on livestock, the warmth all the way down through Florida. A little troughing over the western reaches of the country. Still an active weather pattern. We need every drop here. Pacific Northwest, Big Sky Country. More rain for parts of the southern Canadian prairie, and showers and thunderstorms from the eastern plains across the heart of the Corn Belt. And despite being mid to late June, still the likelihood of severe weather as well over parts of the nation's midsection.
All right, as we get into the month of July, how does that week of Independence Day look?
Now, looks like it'll be a hot one. one centered right across the central part of the country with temperatures maybe approaching the century mark over sections of the plains. Maybe a little under that, considering we've seen moisture in the soils now over the central and southern plains areas. Warmth across much of the Corn Belt, little sliver of cool air into the northeast of New England, the warmth across the valleys of California into the Pacific Northwest. We begin the drying process out here. More rain, central and south Texas, and an active weather pattern for late to June, early July over about the eastern half of the country, including much of the Corn Belt. Tropics begin to get a little more active, but there's still a lot of Saharan dust, Mike, that warms the atmosphere, it dries the atmosphere, and prevents weather systems in the Atlantic from gaining strength from a tropical weather standpoint.
All right. Well, as you look out to the week of July 7th, Greg, is that hot ridge still in place?
Still on the weather maps and charts here, this time kind of retrogressing back across parts of the plains, the southwestern part of the country, where it probably is going to stay. Cooler air across the upper Midwest, showers and thunderstorms over the northern part of the country, across the eastern states, and the tropics begin to get a little more active into areas of Florida and through the mid-Atlantic region as well.
Our Farm Progress Update is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of heavy-duty grain carts and make the most of your harvest season. Visit brandt.ca for more. Well, it's hard to believe, but the end of August will be here before we know it, and that means Farm Progress Show is sneaking up on us. Joining us now to break down what's new is Matt Youngman. He's the National Events Director here at Farm Progress. And Matt, I understand this is the 20th anniversary of Farm Progress Show at Decatur. Is that right?
It is hard to believe that it was 20 years ago that we started this permanent site strategy. After the rainout of 2003, the 50th anniversary, we made a quick pivot and signed an agreement, a long-term agreement. Originally, it was a 20-year agreement. We've extended it several times since. And yeah, a lot of the same folks that we built that site with back in 2004 and 2005, I'm still working with to put on shows today.
That is fantastic. And of course, for folks who have never been to the Decatur show site before, Matt, fill us in. What to expect when you come to town on those August dates?
It's a 4 million square foot exhibit field, and we've already sold out of indoor space, and we're adding a second tent so we can keep accepting new exhibitors who continue to come in. Looking forward to a full show site, and we then rotate out to the field demonstration areas where all that crop was in the ground by April 16th, thanks to a lot of work by our host farmers. And everything is in fantastic shape for that demonstration. We are adding to those demonstrations a new dedicated drone viewing area so that we can safely operate drones according to the FAA rules and give folks an opportunity to take a look at all of the different technologies coming out in applicator drones.
Well, that is what we find at Farm Progress, is what's next in the world of agriculture. Matt, of course, Farm Progress Show, big event, thousands of people coming from around the country getting to the site. Any changes to anticipate this year?
No, there's actually a lot of road construction going on. Anybody from Central Illinois is going to know that. There's a lot of road construction going on in and around the show site, but that will all be wrapped up and maybe not wrapped up, but in great position to accept the traffic. We have a great working relationship with all the law enforcement and the folks that take care of those roads. And so they're working with us to make sure that everybody gets in and out of there safely. All the routing is all the same. And as we start to add more things to the lineup and unveil things that are coming down the line, Farm Progress Show and all of our social media channels be the place to follow up on that.
Fantastic. You can find that at farmprogressshow.com. And Matt, why should folks get on there right now to get registered?
We are populating it as we speak. You can register for your discounted tickets, get those bought. You can book your hotel room, sign up for your golf cart, all those kind of things that you need to do to prep for your trip are all there and available right now, as well as all the information that we continually add to it as we unveil the new things that are happening at this year's show.
And there will be more coming out over the next 70 days or so. Matt Youngman, National Events Director at Farm Progress, thanks for filling us in on this year's Farm Progress Show.
Thanks, Mike.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. It's a cane tractor in the tractor shed this weekend. No, not one that was used in sugar cane. It was made by Mr. C-A-I-N. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics. Farmers, I want you to visit their website. Take a look at the wide array of polyplastic products they have to make your business more efficient. LundellPlastics.com. Well, they know about it in the Nebraska Panhandle. In fact, there's a museum that has many of the things Mr. Kane, Marcus Kane, invented back in the day. He farmed some 4,000 acres. They're just a little bit south of Chadron, Nebraska, raising potatoes and wheat for many of those years. And he was busy inventing. Our friend Kurt Ahrens, longtime Nebraska writer, said, yeah, he was a farmer first, but Marcus Kane, as an inventor, it was a close second for him. Take a look at this tractor. Well, he even put his name on it, so there would be no mistake about who invented the tractor, M.J. Kane. To this day, you can see some of his inventions at a museum there, the Dawes County Museum, Chadron, Nebraska. Some of the things he invented, such as a 200-horsepower tractor he made in 1965. He crafted it from a World War II tank retriever. Yes, one of those things that went into the field to recover tanks during the Second World War. Oh, there were many other inventions he had too. He had a prototype self-propelled combine. And Mr. Kane even had his own oil refinery on the farm there, right there in Dawes County, Nebraska, where you can still see his inventions at the Dawes County Museum. Let's go to Mark Stock now for his weekly report from Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. We hope you and all the fathers and grandfathers and godfathers have a wonderful Father's Day on Sunday. If you'd like to get yourself a Father's Day present, watch the Van Wall late model John Deere farm machinery auction selling on Monday, June the 16th, items located in Bird Island, Minnesota. And on Tuesday, June 17th, the No Reserve Dealer and Farmer Machinery Auction in Hamilton, Illinois will feature ag and construction equipment, semi-trucks, and much more. And on Wednesday, June the 18th, Brandon Snodgrass from Brock, Nebraska will sell a 2023 Claas Lexion four-wheel drive track combine, plus a 2021 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 Trail Boss crew cab pickup, and many more items. And on Thursday, June the 19th, JF Farms Inc., they are retiring by Gooding, Idaho, selling forage harvesting equipment. 2015 Klaus Jaguar 980 self-propelled forage harvester, plus several rotary forage harvester heads and pickup forage headers. All items are available for public inspection at the site in Gooding, Idaho. So Max, a lot of auction action taking place this week.
Our FFA chapter tribute is brought to you by Geringhoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Geringhoff.com. Geringhoff, proudly built in the American heartland. This week, we're getting to know some of the Texas FFA leadership. Walton Marshall joins us now. He serves as the Vice President for Area 2. Walton, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Fill us in on your background. Did you grow up with agricultural experience?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was very blessed to grow up on a beef cattle operation in West Texas. We have a cow-calf and feeder calf operation. And so I've kind of been involved with production agriculture my entire life.
So that addresses the agriculture side of the question, Walton. But what made you want to be a part of FFA?
My ag teacher. I walked into my first ag class and really wasn't interested in being involved at all. And then I was kind of voluntold, if you might say, that I was going to participate in FFA. It ended up becoming one of the biggest blessings of my life.
That's fantastic. And you've worked your way into leadership, serving as the vice president. And what have been some of the highlights of this year's service? Oh,
man, I've had some amazing opportunities this year. We've gotten to meet with the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. That was very, very cool. I've had the opportunity to go to states like Oregon, New York, Ohio for their state conventions. That's definitely been one of my highlights. And also just getting to engage with more members than I would have too at a area level or a district level. That's been something that I've really enjoyed.
So many great opportunities once you're in that blue jacket. Walton, thank you so much for joining us this week and filling us in on your term as Vice President for the Texas FFA.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. Chad Colby joins us now with an update from Apple. Chad, what's new?
Apple just rolled out some major updates to their operating system that goes across all their platforms. Watch, Apple TV, Mac, you name it. The big news was talking about Apple Intelligence. They've really expanded that to really cover a lot more things. When it comes to the iPhone, lots and lots of changes. A few big ones that I liked. It looks like they've really simplified the use of the camera. So if you put it in portrait mode, you flip up with your thumb, you can easily make adjustments to that photo. Not to mention you can double click and get to all those settings that in the past weren't so easy to do so. Another thing I thought was really neat is they have something now called live translation.
Et de l'eau de fleur d'oranger à la pâte, c'est ça mon secret.
How cool is that? Not to mention, finally, a real substantial upgrade to CarPlay. All of these new features will be out this fall with the next iPhone, and I really appreciate this finally. You can have a map and have some widgets on the side, whether that's music or maybe you're tracking a flight for someone. The other thing that's really big too is they've got a new feature for Hold Assist, and there's a new way to protect yourself from those spam calls. That's pretty cool. iPad also got massive changes. It certainly makes the iPad more like a computer. The biggest is the organization around Windows. You can have multiple apps open, and then like on your computer, you can control where those are. I think that's going to be really great in our ag setting. Not to mention, there's some other great recording features as well now on the iPad. You can learn a lot more about this. Go out to apple.com or one of my favorite websites, macrumors.com. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Now, this is a big upgrade, and Chad told me that it will also apply to recently purchased Apple products. So don't feel like you have to hold off on making a purchase until this upgrade's out. You'll qualify when it's released. Last week at the World Pork Expo, there was an interesting movie screening. It was called A World Without Cows at the Pork Expo. I had the chance to catch up with Alltech's Susanna Elliott about why they chose to air this documentary to these agricultural producers.
The title alone creates a whole lot of conversation, and it probably seems interesting that we're screening a film about cows at the World Pork Expo, but the reality is it's more of a conversation about agriculture. And the genesis of this was really the narrative that we're seeing around agriculture globally, and how often, as many of your viewers would sympathize with, it does not reflect what we see firsthand working in global agriculture. And for us, the tipping point was actually Super Bowl 2021. There was a commercial that aired that extolled the praises of a world without cows. So we took on the challenge because we are a business that was founded by an Irish scientist, entrepreneur, and storyteller. The storytelling runs hot in those Irish veins. And we deployed two of our team members who came to us as journalists, long careers in journalism, and we gave them a new assignment to travel the world to find the facts. Are we better off in a world without cows? That journey took them 3.5 years to more than 40 locations worldwide, and we had a completed documentary as of August last year. It's now in 19 different languages. It has been entered into film festivals globally, and for me, a real pinch me moment was being in the Beverly Hills Film Festival. Think of Mann's Chinese Theater, that's where the Oscars take place. To be seeing a documentary that is fact-based, science-based around animal agriculture appearing there is provoking conversation.
Provoking conversation is so key. And you mentioned that it's more than just livestock, or it's more than just pork, it's more than just beef, it's all animal agriculture needs to advocate. What's the importance in sharing our story? How does that add value?
It's incredibly important because people are more disconnected from the farm realities than they've ever been. And we also live in a dynamic right now that is questioning what is truth. And so it's important that the producer voice is being shared. And we often say farmers, producers need to do a better job of telling their story. Well, we also need to give them platforms to tell their story. And that is what World Without Cows seeks to achieve from these journalist perspectives. They broaden the lens and hopefully broaden the conversation around cows and our planet. And that's a conversation that has nutrition implications, its economic implications, its environmental implications. And that's what we hope. People pause and think, what are the implications of perhaps some of the decisions and the conversations that we're having around cows these days?
So I don't want to ask you what the documentary found. Are we better off in a world without cows or not? But if we've got viewers who want to watch the documentary, see how it plays out, where would you send them?
worldwithoutcows.com. That is where you will find the trailer, you'll find all the facts from the film, because we want to be incredibly transparent with all the information in the documentary so that we build that trust and the credibility with audiences who view it. So follow worldwithoutcows.com. That's where you can find updates on where we're screening World Without Cows, and hopefully over the coming year we'll even see more broader distribution of World Without Cows.
Well, I know I don't want to live in a world without ribeyes, so we better keep those cattle around. Thank you, Susanna, for filling us in on the World Without Cows documentary. And folks, thank you for joining us here today. Be sure to catch us next time, right here, for This Week in Agribusiness. Have a great week, everyone. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studios. For more than 70 years and 3 generations, Strauss has been manufacturing high-performance, German-engineered workwear, work boots, and safety equipment. Prepare for the next growing season at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.